Hi guys, I hope you are all good. We are on chapter 6, part 2 of our book Tiger Wars by Steve Bagshaw. Cinta stared at a gap in the floorboards. She could see the tracks rattle-rattling beneath like the rungs of a ladder zipping past during an intermediate fall. She could only distract herself for so long before the enormity of what she had just heard clattered into her brain again. This boy in front of her was a killer, trained from birth to steal and murder, and she was his captive. Yet he hadn't hurt her. In fact, he'd rescued her from the attack dogs, even though she was no longer of any real use to him. And now she sensed a vulnerability about Seika too. He was just like his falcon namesake, seeing life at a totally different speed to those around him. When enthralled in the hunt, with senses blazing, he had focus, an ease and alertness that was frightening. As long as the adrenaline raced, he was in his element, but as soon as life slowed to a normal pace, he didn't know what to do with himself. Here in the train carriage, trying to hold a conversation with a girl of his own age, he'd become awkward, restless, and utterly out of place. Suddenly, he seemed like the child he really was, lost in thoughts and a million miles away. Seika thought back to his days with the clan in their forest home. The clan lands were in Eastern Europe, in the last great ancient forests on the continent. These wild, dark woodlands were alive with stories and were filled with boar, bear, elk, lynx, and even wolf. The clan were constantly on the move, making camp for no more than a few nights before relocating. It was, for the most part, terrific fun. Who wouldn't relish the opportunity to have a life that was one big camping trip in a wild forest, being taught to track, to hunt, and to fight? The teachers lived with the boys and watched carefully for inepathy between them, which was soon quelled so arguments and personality clashes were unheard of. They were like brothers, a family, a pack. Seika remembered how they were taught to observe the ways of the animals around them in order to become more adapt to the ways of the forest. One spring he'd followed a small viper, emblazoned with a diamond pattern, to see it hunt. He watched how it selected its ambush position with great care to match its own camouflage and choose a spot alongside a game trail where small vole would eventually travel down. The viper invested all of its efforts into ensuring that everything was right, then watched and waited in total silence without a twitch of its muscles, utterly patient. It was 3 days before a vole passed within striking distance, and when the snake struck, it was lethal and perfect. When Seika hunted after that, he would observe that same care and consideration in his planning, with the knowledge that when he did strike, it must be perfect. There must only be one chance of success. But as Seika had got older, he had inevitably started to ask questions. The teachers never addressed what the clan did, what the purpose was of their training. The boys were encouraged to be free spirits, always learning from the natural world around them, always improvising, yet never asking the big questions about who they actually were or what their training might finally lead to. Truth was, the tigress in the thicket had been the tipping point for Seika. The teachers taught that the clan was everything, that the outside world was cruel and stupid. They were taught that the horrors of people forced to live in tiny boxes surrounded by roaring machines and thick, poisonous, smoky air, far from the life-giving bounty of the mother forest. Most were miserable lab rats, so that it was somehow fine to steal from them or harm them. However, when Seika had been to towns and cities on training exercises, although never comfortable, he had felt that the city had an excitement of its own, and that not all people looked unhappy and trapped. Questioning was simply not allowed by the clan, though. The boys had to follow the teachings of the prophet or face the consequences. "I'm hungry again," he said gruffly. Have you got any more money?" Cinta shook her head. "You stole it all last night." "You ate too. What are you complaining about? What about your necklace?" He gestured to the locket Cinta wore. "That would get us a proper meal." Cinta started and clasped at the locket on her breast protectively, turning away from him as if protecting a suckling infant. "No, we'll starve before you take this." Seika had leaned forward to snatch the necklace. "It's just a jangly thing," he blurted out, If you were in the woods, it would shine and scare everything away. It's useless, and I'm starving." He reached forward again, but Cinta forcefully pushed him away. Instinctively, Seika raised his fist to strike her, but she didn't flinch, and something in her defiant amber eyes made him hesitate. After a few seconds, Seika could hold her stare no longer. "It was my mother's," she said. "It's pretty much the only thing I have of hers. It's more precious to me than anything. You can hurt me all you want, but you're not having it." He slumped back. Cinta saw that her victory was a significant one. Seika's whole posture had changed, overwhelmed by her dominance. She couldn't help but soften. He seemed so lost and confused. For some reason, she felt the need to explain. "My mother died when I was very young. I barely remember her, just that she used to sit and comb my hair after I'd been playing in the plantations. She had long fingers and always used to wear a light blue sari, like a peahen's eggshell." She paused and thought for a second. "That's all." "Was she very beautiful?" asked Seika quietly. "Yes, she was, actually. I don't know. I always think of her as beautiful, but I can't really remember her face at all. When I see her in my dreams, she always has someone else's face there." She laughed self-consciously. The idea of putting someone else's face onto her dead mother's body seemed like such a babyish thing to do. "It's so sad that I don't remember her." "We never knew our mothers or fathers," Seika said. She detected a sadness in his tone now. "Though some of the boys claimed to, we always knew that they were lying. We used to talk about it sometimes at night. Most reckoned we'd been stolen when we were babies. Some thought we'd been made in test tubes, like clones or something. And the teachers never told us anything. They taught us all the time, but they never told us who we were, why we were there. And now I don't even have them. My father wants to sell me as a bride to a fat doctor who must be 30 years older than me. I have no home anymore. I am like you." "You're nothing like me," Seika mumbled. "You don't know what I've done." Cinta felt her stomach leap into her throat. "What?" She said it in a shakily sick voice, and then trying to steel herself. "Did you kill someone?" Seika's eyes were still examining the floorboards. Then he looked up to the mountains, slowly changing their perspective as the train rattled on. "This is my first big job. I realise that now. We were brought here to India probably 2 weeks ago. We never met the client. Wolf told us what we had to do." "Is he the one who's chasing you?" "Yes. He was always special, stronger than any of us. They had him marked out to be the clan leader from about 5 years old." Seika saw in his mind the group sitting in a semicircle in front of Wolf. When he had said Wolf was stronger, he didn't mean physically. There was no doubt that Bear was bigger and could have out-wrestled him, but Bear was kind of stupid. Wolf, on the other hand, was a natural alpha. He had taken control with an ease and a confidence that no one had ever questioned. "Wolf told us that the job was to bring in tigers, 5 of them. The reward would be higher if we brought them back alive. The extra credit would be given to any clan member who did anything to harm the park guards protecting the tigers." "What? But that's insane." Cinta was incensed. "You've spent your life surrounded by nature, being defined by nature, and then you go out and you wreck it. Why didn't you say no?" It didn't make any sense to Seika either. I know, the others were just so excited, maybe a bit frightened too, but it didn't seem right to me. Tigers they're special. No clan member was ever strong enough to be called Tiger, and as far as I knew, they never have been. I told Wolf I wasn't sure about what we were doing was right, and that's when the teachers put the plaster on me. After that, everything was like a weird dream. I was running, hunting, but it's almost like it wasn't me, like I was watching someone else doing it. And then what happened? It's not easy to find a tiger in India anymore. We knew what we were looking for. It was only a few days before we picked up the trail of our first tiger. I tracked it down on my own. Following the spoor, I could smell it in the air. In a kill, I found a Seika deer that had been taken and half eaten, so I knew it was close by, and then I found it. Why was I telling her all this? It couldn't do any good, except it felt with every word as if he was getting the whole thing straight in his head. Clouds were clearing, sense was being made of chaos. "And you realised you couldn't kill it?" It was, if it was possible for Seika to shrink into himself any more than he did, visibly squirming. Eventually, unfortunately, by then, it was too late. "You killed him?" Cinta was aghast. This was worse than anything he had ever confessed so far, the idea of slaughtering a tiger, one of the few tigers left in the world. It was the most miserable crime imaginable. It wasn't a he, it was a she, and she had cubs. That was what got me. Suddenly I saw these two defenseless, tiny creatures, and I couldn't do it. I guess even the drugs they'd given me weren't enough, but I couldn't let her suffer any more either. He shook his head, just as he had then, as if shaking off a nightmare. The image of the tigress and her cubs would be with him forever. That's when I ran, and, well, the rest you know. "But the cubs," Cinta said. "What happened to the cubs?" "The clan will go back for the dead tiger. If they find the cubs, they'll take them too," he added matter-of-factly. "If they don't find them, they'll die." "We have to go back and find them." But even as she said it, Cinta knew that this was nonsense. The cub's fate was sealed by the murderer in front of her, all her rage released like the valve bursting in a pressure cooker, and she lashed out at Seika, slapping him about the head and the body. "Murderer! Murderer! You're one of the most vile poachers. I can't even believe you are real people. How could you?" Seika reeled back, putting up his arms to fend off the attack. Eventually, her anger spent, she sat back, sobbing. Seika paused a second and then continued. I know this is the worst thing I have ever done, and now I want to put things right. I'm not sure how, but I will make things right. I'm out now, and I'm never going back. I'll keep running for the rest of my life if I have to, but I'm never going back to the clan." As he spoke these words, the train began to slow, with the nails raking down the blackboard, squeak of the brakes on the metal wheels. Cinta threw off her sack blanket. She was finally about to be free. There we go. I hope you enjoyed that. Tomorrow we will be on chapter 7. Thank you for watching. I will see you all soon. Take care and be good. Bye bye.